Ever been in a rut, or after trying to do something to a level of desperation, you still can't get what you want? Like going through all the hoops of studying drawing and painting, yet something is still off about the pieces being made. Like you know the process, what to do, what not to do, yet the outcome looks like a mistake. But then you suddenly let go, just give up and do something else entirely, be it a different goal, different process, or different perspective. Essentially just take a break. And for some reason, when you do go back to do the activity where you had trouble with after some time, finally, you see something that will take you to the next level, or at least get you closer to your goals. I believe there is a point where we just break down somewhere during our life, and that can happen multiple times, such as what I experienced in painting, crafting, and to some extent even mathematics. But in that breaking, we are able to pick up the pieces and solve the puzzle that is ourselves, to be broken and rebuilt anew, something different, something that can move on. So let me tell you a story. Long ago, in the year 2020, I had finished my first ever webcomic, Dream Journal, and was working on the next one, which was called The Fairy Princess. During that time, like the prodigal son I was, I returned to digital art with serious intent after a 1 to 2 year hiatus from it, seldom using the medium. But there was that frustration, that despite going through all the practice and study of pencil drawing and watercolor, I still sucked at doing digital art. The improvements were surprisingly minor, as although I was able to carry over the principles and lessons, but not the physical act of digital painting. Hence the result was that I was fully aware of the mistakes and points that needed refinement, but lacked the muscle to wield my stylus and tablet on an aging computer to make what I want. I experimented with the digital tools for the first time in a while, making a note not to overuse them as it was my previous mistake all those years ago, but at the same time refining the basic tools such as the brush, no longer relying on pre-made assets but making my own to suit my abilities. And while as it went on, my skills with them would develop gradually, in that time, around mid-2020, I was in a rut, at least in the field of digital painting. Now, digital art has always been a medium that I had interest in, not because of its convenience or ease of use. By the way, digital art is not easy, but because of its process that had intrigued me. In traditional painting or drawing, you're stuck with one layer, no matter what, watercolor, acrylic, pencil, you name it. And once you put in the image, you can't warp it, change the contrast, or alter the hue. Traditional media was a classic thing that even until now, I practice and hold in high regard. But as a kid, looking through the speed painting videos of people molding an image with multiple varying layers, warping, using sliders to control and fine-tune the output of the piece. And at that time, seeing someone paint from grayscale to colored was like magic within the computer. To me, digital art was a medium through and through, not a shortcut or cheat, but a medium like any other, and like any other medium, it had its process. However, as a young boy, I made many mistakes with digital art. My most grievous sin being using overlay layers to hide my deficiencies, relying on auto contrast to gamble the perfect values, not studying the fundamentals, ignoring my mistakes and just covering them up with the plethora of digital tools unknown or known, like filters, transforms, etc. My digital art as a young boy was founded on spectacle, imagination, and purely interest. All respectable traits that kept me going despite frustrations. However, not practicing the fundamentals or just methods being taught online skewed my progress, not just in digital painting, but art as a whole. I would rely on the tools more than my own skills. Once more, in the digital medium, I would often Frankenstein together effects and filters to mask my deficiencies. In traditional pencil drawing, I would blame the paper or pencil if I wasn't getting the results I wanted. In acrylic, I also blamed the paint, canvas, or brush. I realize now that back then my process and foundation in art was not well. Sure, I could make stuff, but there was too much of filters and excess digital shenanigans that a good bulk of my digital childhood paintings were more machine than man. Hence why, or at least a good part of it, in 2017, I began painting less and less in the computer, until in 2018, I seldom made any digital paintings at all. Alas, I went through a drawing arc for like 2 years with pencil and watercolor. But now that I've given you my background with digital art, let's go back to mid-2020. The pandemic was unsure, everything was unsure, and I was holed up in my room that day, frustratingly painting this portrait of Nerevar from the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. I had been watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and The Lord of the Rings while doing this, and for 3 days I made a step-by-step process, trying to transfer my traditional skills to my digital painting, and at the end of it, I was unsatisfied with the outcome. Despite the line art, the values, and the color, the picture looked flat, unappealing, and very much below my expectations. Even the FX layers, like overlay and multiply, were so obvious despite my efforts to minimize them. It's like I made no improvement at all from the last time I left the medium. I just felt like giving up there and then, considering to just focus on traditional media only. But this medium, digital art, was something I needed to return to like the prodigal son I was to it. And so, the next day, in 2 hours, yes, 2 hours, I painted this. Now, it's not my best piece, but at that time, I achieved what I intended to paint in 2 hours without any line work, rigid process, or meticulous steps. I molded this picture with random brushes, no filters, no overlays, just brushes. An impromptu painting, based on reference, a limited color palette I dropped from the chaotic background, using my knowledge of the fundamentals loosely, like with perspective, values, definition, form, etc. Just free-flowing. It wasn't perfect, but it was a crack on the wall that would lead me to a path where if I just kept going would eventually get me to the abilities I could do today. Like realizing that you don't need fancy paper, charcoal pencils, or meticulous rendering to draw a good portrait. You don't need filters, overlays, transforms, and etc. to paint a good digital painting. At that moment of breaking, what I puzzled together was something simple. The principles, fundamentals, and outputs of digital painting were essentially the same as traditional painting, but the process wasn't. More so, the best way I could describe it was being analogous. And so I needed time, but more importantly, be open to change, doing different methods as this was a different medium. Now, techniques like layering and acrylic, underpainting, sketch foundations are some traditional practices that are easily convertible to digital painting if you desire an analogous product. Perhaps what I mean goes somewhere along the lines of painting with a brush traditionally means imparting pigment on canvas via the brush, following its pressure, stroke, shape, and form of the bristles. Whereas let's say in Photoshop, the brush instead stamps a pattern following the stroke. The pressure can be varied or eliminated entirely, and the pigment doesn't run out. So they're not the same. However, if you fine-tune the settings of a Photoshop brush, the pressure sensitivity, the spacing of the stamped images, enabling the direction and such, what you get is a brush that could act traditionally. Not entirely the same, but analogous, comparable. Nothing good comes easy. My ignorance and other debacles I had as a child doing art, going through the digital medium was a path of instability, recklessness, and impatience with wonder, dreams, and spectacle. Blaming or only ever relying on tools but not my own skills to craft pieces. It was all so complicated, and I made it so. And after a year or two of getting my shit together, returning to digital painting and expecting the greatest thing ever was foolish of me. As again, nothing good comes easy. all takes time and a process to achieve what we want to or need to. As for the sudden revelation or output like the 2-hour painting I made following the failure of the 3-day painting, I think it wasn't an accident. I believe it was an event that happened due to compounding practices and not some mystical thing that came as a chance. Many things in life, not just art, have similar principles and goals, but different methods and processes to achieve them. One should observe and adapt, I guess. But speaking about painting and art, it is truly complex, but the foundations are ever so simple, stupidly simple, and from there we build something great, one layer at a time. This complex web of processes and steps, forming intricate and detailed methods to achieve a certain piece, are founded on simple things, and they can manifest in the form of just one day giving up on something, but still do it nonetheless and surprisingly get to somewhere with promise. With such event being a result of compounded practice, experiments, and failures. I'm not sure if this part of the journey makes sense. Honestly, it's a bit chaotic trying to chronicle the things I've been through. My art journey was never a simple beginning and end, I suppose. And most probably, if you're also an artist, no matter what medium or practice, your journey is going to have a lot of chaos as well. But it's being calm in the face of chaos, equanimous, that we grow and develop to be better in whatever aspects that might be. And so, that's all I have to say for now. If you're going through something like a project or art piece, be it painting, song, or even dance, know that when you pursue these grand ambitions with all your heart, soul, and skill, no one can ever judge you for not having tried.